Yo! Hi to Horizon, thank you for the 41 months, by the way. Candy, thank you for the 45 with the Prime. Thank you very much. Hope you are doing well. Of course. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And Jenna, thank you for the raid. Appreciate that. Hello, everyone. And of course, welcome back to another stream. Today is going to be a fun one because we are recording another video on stream. Wow. Can you believe it? Okay, honestly, I feel like we've recorded a new video on stream like every single day like the past week. But it's okay. That means there's more content for us, right? That means there's more content for us. Today we are going to be bringing back a series or recording an episode for a series that we actually haven't done in a while. If you guys remember last October, I started this series for the Morant channel called Reddit Horror Stories. And we did a couple episodes. We did one last Halloween. We did one for Christmas. We did one for what was the other one? Valentine's Day. But it's been, a couple months since then. So I figured we might as well bring this back one more time here and try to record a Spooktober special for this Halloween. So that's pretty much going to be the plan for today. We are going to be recording episode 4 of Reddit Horror Stories. Lazy here has actually found some stories for us. The thing that's going to be different about this episode, though, is all of these stories are from r/no sleep, which I realize I didn't explain to you, Lazy, but I asked for like true horror stories, like stories of people's experiences. The thing about r/no sleep, though, is these are fictional stories that like you're supposed to be writing from the perspective as if it happened to you, So these these are actually true stories. Well, I think r/no sleep does have some very interesting ones regardless. So yeah, we're going to be going through 5 stories here today, recording these for another episode of Reddit Horror Stories, but it's okay. We'll just say that this episode isn't true horror stories. It's just horror stories from Reddit, But yeah, I don't think these stories are too long. This should probably take us maybe like an hour to get through, something like that. No one is writing on Reddit real. I mean, there's like more realistic stories, stuff that isn't from r/no sleep. But I'm gonna be honest, I feel like all of the quote unquote realistic stories I've already like kind of found, and we've already read them in like the previous 4 or 3 episodes. So it's okay as long as it's a good story, right? As long as it's a good story. Chaywan, thank you for the 8 months as well. Thank you very much. Subinsky with the 39 too. And Lemonhead, thank you for the tier 1. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Speaking of which, oh my god. 1.5 months. And we will be 5 years streaming on Twitch. My goodness. What should we do? What should we do for that? What should we do for our 5-year anniversary on Twitch? I was thinking of like a 24-hour-thon. But that's also a lot of work, man. That's so much. 24-hour stream. Like, what would I even do? What would I even do for 24 hours, Actually, our anniversary is December. Is it the 2nd or the 4th? Dude, I don't even know. I think it's the 2nd, right? It's the 4th? Oh, crap. Is it I thought it was the 2nd. Am I crazy? Okay, it's one of those days. I mean, regardless, I was just okay. Well, it's a Tuesday or a Thursday, so either way, I would be streaming those days. Actually, I wanted to do full variety game binge. So I was thinking we could finish the entirety of Undertale, go into Hollow Knight, and then go straight into Hollow Knight Silk Song. But now that I think about it, how long is Undertale? Oh, it's not. Wait, I swear it was longer. It says 6 to 8 hours. Oh, wait, that's winnable. How long is Hollow Knight? Oh, okay. Hollow Knight is 27 hours. Okay, so we probably wouldn't be finishing that one. We probably wouldn't be finishing that one, but I'm also I feel like if I played the entirety of Undertale in a single stream, my brain would just be like fried by the end of it. 6 to 8 hours isn't actually that bad, but like even the Little Nightmare stream, it was 6 hours. And by the end of that, I was already like, "Oh my god. I need a break, bro." And that would only be 1/4 of the entire stream duration if we did do a 24. Holy. And then like what would our sub goals be? You know? Hmm. No, I'm not doing the R&R quest. We are not doing that. We're not doing the R&R quest. Okay, December for sure. I want to do Undertale though. It was supposed to be September, but that didn't happen. But I feel like Undertale's a good like holiday season game to like release episodes of. Well, I guess we'll figure it out. I'll try to think of something. I'll try to think of something special for our 5-year anniversary on Twitch. And I also want to play Hollow Knight. We're never going to reach Silk Song at this point. It's going to be next year before I put out the Hollow Knight Silk Song playthrough. Okay. Let's see. Love in Deep Space for 24 hours? Yeah, I don't know about that one. I don't know about that one, man. Okay, Bugatti, where were we at? Okay, we did step 82 yesterday. Yes, we did step 82. Where is this new step supposed to go, though? Oh, I see it. Okay. 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 Step 82 was yesterday. As you can see, we finished the attachments on this Bugatti here. Step 83, I think, should be pretty straightforward. Literally just put this here. Oh, wait, no, this goes sideways. Boom. That's one. And I think this also goes sideways. All right, there you have it. Step 83 complete. Yeah, maybe I'll finish the... Maybe we should finish the Bugatti. 24-hour stream, only building Legos. Okay, let's see. All right, I think we should honestly just get started with the stories. We might have to take a break after the first story. Um, Today is my dad's birthday, so I think I'm gonna FaceTime in as they're cutting the cake. But I think we should be able to get one story out of the way. We should be able to get one story out of the way. So we'll take a quick intermission, and then we will come back and we will finish the other 4 stories here. But yeah, let's at least do the first one. Let's at least do the first one. Okay. Or soundtrack. Or ambient noise. Are these good? What do these sound like? Are these spooky enough? Sounds like someone's like groaning in that last one. Okay, this should be fine. Let's do the intro. Cinema Rolls, change your name. But thanks for the 21 months as well. Also, Subinsky, I don't know if I said this. 39. Thank you. All right, I'm going to turn the alerts off here. Oh, wait. I think I have to put you guys at the top of the screen. Do I still have it? Or maybe I should just take you guys out. Those look cleaner this way. Maybe go top right. That looks kind of weird. You can't see the chat when it's in top left, though. Actually, I guess it's okay. All right, we'll do this. I want to make sure I'm centered here. All right, alerts are off. I'm going to record this intro. Here we go. Also need to make sure I sit up because the text box is going to be down here at the bottom. Let me raise my chair. Okay, there we go. Hello, YouTube, and welcome back to a very exciting video. Because today, we are bringing back a very popular series on this channel that, I'm going to be honest, I haven't done in a while. But that is going to be Reddit Horror Stories Episode 4. Now, if you haven't seen the other episodes on this channel yet, you can find them, of course, in the top right-hand corner of the screen. But the way this works is last year for Halloween, I started this series called, of course, Reddit Horror Stories. And basically, I just went through Reddit, found a couple of interesting stories, and we narrated them out like, creepypasta style. And you guys actually seem to really enjoy it. So after the Halloween episode, I made 2 other episodes, being the Christmas one and the Valentine's Day one. And today, we are back once again to bring you a continuation. And the thing that is going to be a little bit different about these stories today is the fact that, unfortunately, no, these are not true stories. I believe all of the stories that we have today are from this subreddit called r/no sleep. And if you are, familiar with Reddit horror stories, you might recognize this subreddit, but the thing that makes this unique is these stories are all supposed to be written from the perspective as if they were true. So you'll see people in the replies, commenting as if this is something that actually happened, but these stories themselves are not real. So we're not going to be going with the, true horror story angle this time. But regardless, I think there are definitely a lot of really interesting stories on r/no sleep. And regardless if it's true or not, as long as it's entertaining, it should be fine, right? So we have 5 new stories for you here today that I will be narrating. But of course, if you do enjoy the content, you can like, comment, subscribe. Join us on Twitch, twitch.tv/antonychenn. Let me know if you'd like to see another episode of Reddit Horror Stories. Without further ado, let us begin with story number 1, which is called I Went to a Wedding. The Groom Wouldn't Stop Smiling. Okay, we could do like the stinger transition, or you could just go straight into the story editor. Okay, this soundtrack should be good. Oh, my hair. Okay. I went to my cousin Ava's wedding a few days ago. I'm still processing what's happened. I'll try to get everything else. Restart. Drink water too. Sorry, I ruined your immersion. I went to my cousin Ava's wedding a few days ago. I'm still processing what's happened. I'll try to get everything out as best I can. Ava has been dating some guy named Ethan for the past year. Being in their 30s, they sort of fast-tracked the whole marriage thing. I'd never met the guy, and I hadn't spoken to Ava in a few years, but what the hell? It was guaranteed to be a fun time. The groom walked down the aisle first, a tall, pale man in a dark suit. He stood at the front of the church and smiled. He smiled when Ava walked down the aisle. He smiled as they kissed, after being pronounced husband and wife. He smiled as they walked out of the church. It didn't strike me as weird until we got to the reception. When they entered, he was still grinning that wide grin, with his perfectly straight teeth. But up close, okay, we're gonna go back and stitch this. When they entered, he was still grinning that wide grin, with his perfectly white, straight teeth. But up close, it looked, I don't know, wrong somehow. He wasn't really engaging with guests. He wasn't talking or laughing. He was just sort of scanning the place, staring, grinning wide without it really reaching his eyes. I guess he's smiling for the camera, I told myself. Or maybe he's a little socially awkward, and he figures nothing will go wrong if he just keeps smiling. It got really weird. I don't know why I can't speak today. It got really weird, however, when they served dinner. I watched him sitting at the sweetheart table with Ava, shoveling chicken piccata into his mouth as he still grinned, barely opening his mouth wide enough to get the bite, immediately closing it, making loud chewing noises as he chewed while grinning. Have you ever seen someone chew their food while grinning? It is completely unnatural looking. Smiling with your mouth closed, sure, but showing all your teeth, grinning as you chew? It was so freaking weird. They eventually came to our table to say hi. I couldn't tear my eyes away from his face. He was still grinning. His wide blue eyes were jittering from person to person at the table. His face looked like a mask. There was no warmth. It was like looking at a statue. I whispered this to my sister once they left. There's something seriously wrong with him. Why is he smiling like that? My sister thought I was being a catty old maid. Well, old mister. Shut up, he looks fine. No, he doesn't. He looks like he's madly in love, she snapped back. Stop being jealous. Jeez, Matt. That hurt. It honestly did. None of the other guests seemed to think anything was wrong. They thought it was all fine. Him grinning through the first dance, through the speeches, through the freaking champagne toast. He tilted the champagne flute into his grinning mouth without spilling a drop somehow. This is so weird. I excused myself to use the bathroom, but that was my first mistake, not realizing he had disappeared from the dance floor. As I was washing my hands, a stall door swung open behind me. In the mirror over my shoulder, I saw Ethan standing there. His skin looked milky white in the bright lights. His blue, bulgy frog eyes. His what now? Okay, sorry. Let me read that again. Oh my God. His. Why did they use this description? Why? Why does it have to be bulgy frog eyes? Oh my God. Okay, come on, lock in, lock in. His blue. Okay, maybe we just go his piercing blue eyes. Yes, okay. We're gonna adjust this a little bit. It's just I don't know, man. I don't know. Like why does he have bulgy frog eyes? Oh my God. As I was washing my hands, a stall door swung open behind me. In the mirror over my shoulder, I saw Ethan standing there. His skin looked milky white in the bright lights. His blue. Dude, I can't. I can't. I can't, man. I can't. Why does he have frog eyes? Oh my God, I can't finish this story. Lock in. Lock in. His skin looked milky white in the bright lights. His blue, bulgy frog eyes stared at me. And he was smiling. I don't mean that he saw me and then smiled. No. When he opened the stall door, he was already smiling. He walked over and began washing his hands in the sink right next to me. Even though there were 3 other sinks, our shoulders bumped. Great wedding, I mumbled, trying to be friendly. He turned to look down at me, slowly, His blue eyes bored into mine. My heart began to pound. Music's great too, I said nervously to fill the silence. He just stared at me. That's when I realized he hadn't said a single word the entire wedding. There were no vows. He just nodded when the officiant asked if he took Ava as his wife. He didn't thank the best man after the speech, and I hadn't even seen him talking to Ava at the sweetheart table, just smiling, staring. I backed away. His eyes tracked me as I went. Just as I reached the bathroom door, he stretched up to his full height and stared down at me. He looked even taller than he had in the reception hall, somehow, under the fluorescent lights. Then, he stopped smiling. As his face relaxed, his cheeks sagged, his forehead drooped. The skin on his face began to shift and slide. I froze as his face began to pull apart and separate from his skull. He grinned, and everything stretched back into place. I finally leapt into action and darted out the bathroom door. I went back to my sister and grabbed her arm. "We have to get out of here," I breathed. "Ethan, he's..." "Will you shut up already?" she said, barely even looking at me. And then Ethan sauntered in, his long legs taking him smoothly across the dance floor. He slowed as he passed our table on his way back to Ava. He reached out and squeezed my shoulder. It's been 3 days. The skin on my shoulder is pulsing with pain, like it's infected somehow. And I can't help but notice every time I look in the mirror. My face looks a little saggier, a little looser, like it isn't quite attached the same way anymore. So I've started smiling more, just to hold everything in place. Ooh, what a story. What a story. Oh my God, I'm not gonna lie. This is a little bit of a warm up, right? This is a little bit of a warm up. Oh my God. YouTube, I don't know if it's gonna be included in the video, but bulgy frog eyes? I don't know, man. Like, I feel like the story was really good, building suspense. Like, why is this guy smiling? Up until that point, I feel like the adjectives really just kind of like snapped me out of the story. It was just like everything was like spooky. It was all creepy. And then we're just hit with blue, bulgy frog eyes. And then after that, I was just like, oh my God, like this guy's smiling. Like, come on. Like it is sinister in a way, like I'm assuming it's probably, it's not like he's going like, it's probably one of those like creepy, like wide grins or something like that. But yeah, a bit of a warm up, God, blue, bulgy frog eyes. You know what I think of every time I hear that? I think there's this one guy on like TikTok or like Instagram Reels whose whole thing is like he can make his eyes bulge so he looks like a frog. I swear, I don't know what this guy's username is. I've like only like come across these reels like a couple of times, but bro, that is exactly what I'm thinking of when I hear blue bulgy frog eyes. I mean, overall, it's still an unsettling story. I wouldn't necessarily call this a horror story. There's nothing like explicit. But it's definitely still a little bit unsettling, right? Something of the unknown. But yeah, it sounds like this Ethan guy, this fella just needs he needs some retinol. That's what he needs. This story is a story about aging. You know what it is? It's cuz he's in his 30s. It's cuz he's in his 30s and he didn't use his moisturizer and sunscreen and retinol at night. Yes, this story is about aging. He has a bad skincare routine. Oh my god. Well, good thing this was just our very first story, right? Because we have a couple more, and I think this next one, at the very least, if you're not scared of wrinkles, you will probably find this one a little bit more interesting. And it is called "I Work in a 24/7 Diner. Last night's customers weren't human." And this is by Lady Nix Thalia. Thalia on r/no sleep. Okay, I have 10 minutes. This story, actually, it's not that long. Can we get this one out? Hmm. Okay, if I don't start laughing in the middle, I think we can do it. You know how it only takes a few small accidents to make you homeless? An emergency expense here, a couple of overdraft fees there, a rent check that bounced because of the fees, and an eviction notice that happened because of the bounce. I went from stable, albeit not wealthy, to sleeping in my car within 4 weeks, and I count myself lucky. At least I have a car and a job, which is why I have this story. I work the overnight shift at an all night diner. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. They never close. They're always hiring, and they don't really care about your background. It was the quiet hours. Well, the time is so late, it's early. The diner was empty, so I was leaning against the counter, eating a bowl of chili with shredded cheese and chopped onion, while I scrolled for other jobs on my phone. The cook was outside having a smoke, and the only other person in the diner was with me. Actually, hold on, let me change the music. The cook was outside having a smoke, and the only other person in the diner with me was a young pregnant girl named Shiri, who was texting her grandmother nervously. "I'm gonna have to leave early. My grandma is calling me. I need to come get my child." I hate when she does this, but I can't afford a babysitter either. Shiri was cool, but like everyone else here, she was having a rough time. Her boyfriend was in the prison 60 miles down the road, and part of why she worked here was to fill his accounts and have enough money for regular visits. He was there for murder or something, but we don't really talk about our personal lives, so I wasn't sure. Brucius was the cook, and he took a smoke break at every available opportunity, which, when the restaurant was empty, meant a lot. He'd wander back if a customer walked in, but there was no reason to bother him. "Hey, it's not a problem. I'll handle everything. Go pick up your kid." "Thank you. You're a lifesaver. I owe you." "Don't worry about it. I'll see you Wednesday." She ran out the door, and I didn't think anything of it. I heard her say goodbye to Brucius. Brucius? I heard her say goodbye to Brucius, then her car engine grind as she drove away. I had another 4 hours left on my shift, and with any luck, it would stay this quiet. Of course, since I'm talking to you, you know I wasn't so lucky. The door dinged, and a family of four walked into the room: mom, dad, boy, and girl. My eyes flicked to the parking lot. I didn't see a car, but I just told myself they could have parked behind the building. It's funny, but I don't remember what they looked like. However, I do remember what they wore because it was some real leave it to Beaver Andy Griffith type S word. Okay, wait, that ruins the immersion. Type thing. Yeah, type thing. What even is a Leave It to Beaver Andy Griffith? It's funny, but I don't remember what they looked like. However, I do remember what they wore, because it was some real Leave It to Beaver Andy Griffith type thing. The dad had on a blue plaid button-up shirt with a white what the heck? The dad had on a blue plaid button-up shirt with a white undershirt beneath and khaki trousers. Should we just leave in the bloopers at this point? Editor, what do you think? The dad had on a blue plaid button-up shirt with a white undershirt beneath and khaki trousers. His hair was perfectly slicked back, like one of those old Brile cream ads. Don't know what that is. The mom wore a red gingham check dress with a wide skirt. Crinoline and crinoline? Crinoline and cinched waist. Her hair, too, was impeccable, straight out of an old Betty Crocker commercial. The little girl had her hair in two pigtails, anointed with yellow bows, and was wearing a pink shirt and blue shorts. The boy had a perfect cowlick and wore a blue shirt and red shorts. Sounds like Tintin. I felt unsettled. They looked perfect, but they felt wrong. Brucius came back inside, took one long look at the family as they settled into the booth, then went through the swinging doors into the back without a word. Rude. Good evening, y'all, I said as I sat down the laminated menus. Can I get you anything to drink? Each member of the family clasped their hands over the menu and turned in my direction with a smile. 4 glasses of milk, please, said the dad, his tone folksy, like something out of an old sitcom. Everything looks so delicious, said the mom cheerily without glancing at the menu. I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen adults order milk, especially at such a late hour. Thank you, the dad said when I set their glasses down. No one had moved 1 centimeter, their posture and faces in the same position as they watched me pour their beverages in return. I wiped my hands on my apron and attempted a smile. Are you all ready to order? The 4 of them glanced towards my name tag in unison, and I was suddenly glad most of it was hidden beneath my hoodie. We're waiting for someone, said the mom in a sing-song voice. They all turned to face either other? Huh? I think that's a typo. They all turned to face each other, small, identical smiles on their faces, condensation from their untouched glasses making 4 tiny puddles. It wasn't right for children to be that quiet, or for anyone to be that still. To be honest, it wasn't normal to wait for someone at that hour either. I pretended to wipe down the counters. Guests weren't supposed to be left alone, and I didn't know what to do. Are you sure I can't bring you anything? I asked after a couple distressingly silent minutes. We told you, we're waiting, one of the children hissed. I startled and dropped the rag. That wasn't a child's voice. All 4 sets of eyes again fixated on me. But this time, no one was smiling. My heartbeat rushed in my ears, and I could have sworn they heard it too. Okay, I laughed nervously, my voice a little too high. Abruptly, out of the corner of my eye, I saw Brucius waving frantically behind the swinging doors, gesturing for me to join him in the back. Relieved to have an excuse to leave, I backed away slowly, something deep in my most primal brain telling me not to turn my back to them. Rules be damned. I couldn't be out there alone with them a second longer. I'd barely opened the swinging doors when he jerked me all the way in. Listen, he whispered urgently, his grip tight on my arm. Those people, they aren't real people. I looked back through the small window in the swinging door. He interrupted me. But I don't have time. What? Okay. He interrupted me. What I don't have is time to explain. You see that bag of salt? He jerked his head towards a giant bag of pure rock salt I'd somehow never seen since working here. Pour a line at the front. Make sure it's far enough back that the swinging doors won't break the line. It needs to go all the way from one wall to the other, or extra if you're not sure. I'm confused, and I'm scared. Pour. He hefted his own large bag of salt and began making a wide circle, one large enough to fit us both. Looking behind him, I could see there were already Okay, wait, let me redo that. He hefted his own large bag of salt and began making a wide circle, one large enough to fit us both. Looking behind him, I could see there was already a similar Looking behind him, I could see there was already a similar salt line at the back, stretching from wall to wall. I had no idea what was happening, but I'd never seen Brucius be anything other than laid back and chill my entire time here, and that was enough to get me to listen. As I poured, I took a peek through the round window in the swinging doors and spotted the family still sitting there. They still hadn't moved. This is really creepy, I muttered under my This is really creepy, I muttered under my breath. Once my line of salt had been poured and double checked, Brucius pointed to the inside of the circle and pressed a finger to his lips. Tiptoeing to the wall, he carefully opened the circuit box. Then, taking a deep breath, he switched off the breakers, plunging the entire restaurant into darkness and turning off the lights outside. In the next instant, he leapt to join me in the middle of the circle. One heartbeat later, I heard the most ungodly shrieking from the dining area. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. It was like the sound waves were made of broken glass. My skin felt like it was being peeled off. My eardrums screeched. I started to fall over and stopped abruptly only partway down. Brucius had twisted the collar of my shirt around his hand. I'd almost fallen outside the circle. Another shriek rolled over me, and I sobbed in confusion and pain. My muscles clenched into knots as I fought an instinctive urge to run. Brucius's grip tightened, keeping me grounded. Just then, the swinging doors blasted open, and a rolling, inky mass slithered and slopped its way inside. You'd think it would be too dark to see anything, but there were so many mouths, so many teeth, so many eyes. The space filled with the scent of rot and tar. This was the family. I retched and clamped my hands over my mouth to keep the vomit down. The mass glided and spilled its way up to the very edge of the salt line and stretched horizontally along its entire length. I understood why there was a circle now. If there'd been the slightest gap in the line, or between the line and the wall, it had slithered its way across. My eyes burned the longer I looked. I felt something warm drop into my hand. I thought it was tears. It was a nosebleed. As the screams ratcheted higher, Bruce shouted, "Close your eyes!" I clamped my hands over my ears, screwed my eyes shut, sobbed. Okay, hold on. Remember where we were, okay? Remember where we were. Okay, give me a sec. Pausing the recording. Okay, 1 second. Okay. Where were we? Where were we? Cyberfrost, thank you for the 7 months, by the way. Nintoyas, thank you for the 3 as well. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, I've low-key forgot where we were in the story. Oh, it was the close the eyes part, right? Close the eyes. Okay. All right, sorry, editor. You're gonna have to stitch this together where we left off in the story. Oh yeah, it was here. Okay. Eventually, I don't know how long, the screaming stopped. I must have passed out right after, because when I came to, it was dawn. Every muscle and bone in my body ached when I stood up. My face was crusted with dried tears, snot, and blood. Brucius was red eyed and bedraggled. He was using the special broom, the one that said, "Do not use," in Sharpie on the handle, to sweep all the salt into a large dustpan with the same directive. The salt had turned a smoky blue and smelt like sulfur and gasoline. Perhaps it was the daylight. Perhaps it was surviving the single most terrifying night of my life. But when I spoke, my voice was surprisingly calm, even though it sounded like I'd chewed and swallowed broken glass. "I'm going to wash my face, then I'm going to make us coffee, and then you're going to tell me what the hell that was." He nodded and mumbled, "Yeah," and kept sweeping. I was half tempted to turn the sign at the door to closed, but it would be just my luck if the manager appeared out of nowhere when I did. Besides, the place was empty. Once he was done sweeping, he washed his hands and joined me. I poured him a mug of the best coffee I'd ever tasted in my life. He lit up a cigarette, and we looked at each other across an empty table. Despite the commotion, the diner was in perfect order, like nothing had ever happened. "What was that?" Actually, he'd probably be like, "What was that?" He took a long drag, as though toying with telling me the truth or not. But after last night, it was too late to lie. "They're called the family. I never seen them before, but Carrie, the waitress before you and Sherry, worked here for a few years and said they'd show up every once in a while." He paused as if expecting me to say something. I took a long sip, and he kept on. "The first clue was they didn't have a car. They just appeared. I don't even know from where, and walked in. The second is how they were dressed. Where did they come from? I don't know, but the lore is a family disappeared on the highway decades ago, and when they came back, they were that. And y'all didn't think to tell me this when I got hired? Would you have believed it? I guess not. There's a reason the pay is so good." "What about the salt? The lights?" "Listen, I don't know all the rules, and she didn't either, but before this place was built, apparently there were a lot more disappearances. People would get off at this exit because they thought they saw a sign for food or gas, take a turn, and never be seen again. But now people just stop here, right off the highway and right back on. But that means when the family gets hungry, they come here." "Yeah, that's why you went straight to the back?" "Yeah, I needed to get started." "And you turned off the light so no one stops while they're here?" "Yeah." "What about the salt?" He went quiet. You saw why. At that moment, the door opened and a couple with a toddler entered. A real family, oblivious. We stopped talking. I took their order and Brucius heated up the grill. There was nothing else to do. This happened a few weeks ago, but I'm still working there. Corporate gave us an extra bonus check when the incident was reported, which got me in a cheap hotel with a decent bed and shower for a little while. I'm still applying for jobs, but no one else has called me back for an interview. I'm alive because of Brucius, but he was just hired as a corrections officer at the prison and is leaving soon. I might delete this later, but I needed to share it with someone, where no one would know who I was or judge me. What do you think I should do? And that is story number 2. I'm not gonna lie. I thought this was leading somewhere else. Like I feel like the climax of the story for horror on Reddit at the very least is usually towards the end, right? But this feels like, I don't know. We hit like the most intense part, and then like the last, I don't know, third of it was kind of just like a wind down. But I don't know. What did you guys think about this story? When I heard the salt, I was just like, yo, are these guys snails or something like that? Like yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting. I'll say that. It was interesting. It was interesting. But yeah, I feel like it wasn't really horror. It kind of in like the same way that the first story like didn't really feel like too horror. At the end feels like the end of a mission to wrap things up. It really does. It really does. It's like the Avengers. It's like the Avengers at the at the end of the movie when they're getting food. But I guess they're kind of just like shape-shifting entities, right? Shape-shifting entities that come into the diner. The thing that I'm kind of confused about is what do you think they were waiting for? Because the family, they were like, yeah, we're waiting for someone. Who could they have been waiting for? And I mean, if they're trying to eat, why wouldn't they just eat the staff? Or do you think they're waiting for like another customer to come in and they're trying to like eat them? They're trying to get for like a 2-for-1 or something? Well, I don't know, man. I also like the comments here. They're all like very much in the role of this story. Someone said, as a fellow Shiri, you need to watch out for those girls. And the original poster said, I'll keep that in mind. Someone else said, make a salt line daily at the front door, then they can't come in. OP said, I like that idea. The only problem is I'll have to keep making it whenever a new customer arrives. And they might leave a review or call the manager about all the salt on the floor. Someone else said, so Shiri left directly before the family turned up. Didn't think to warn you, just left. Probably knew that something was going to go down. Has she seen too many coworkers being eaten? Did she just not care? Is she complicit? And OP said, I never suspected her before. Dot, dot, dot. Yeah, it feels more like a suspense story, yeah. Like it's like a suspenseful type of thing. I guess the real horror is what exactly is this family? The fact that this guy is trapped working here, doesn't have like another option. And yeah, you never know when they're going to come back, right? But I suppose at the very least, he gets a fat paycheck. So he's got that going for him. He's got that going for him. All right. Maybe these first two stories were warm-ups. I'm not gonna lie. I only read this one halfway through before before I decided to use this. I would say like the first half, the first two-thirds was pretty interesting. Very, very suspenseful. Gets a lot of questions going, what's happening here. But let's move on to story number 3. And this one is called My Neighbor's Front Door Has Been Wide Open for 2 days. And it is by 11 Velociraptors. Since it was a sunny Friday afternoon, I didn't think much of it at first. It was 5:30, and I had just returned home from work. When I saw that my neighbor's front door was opened, I assumed that she was simply unloading something from her car. I went inside my own house and went through my usual after work routine, going for a run and then making dinner for my wife Alice and me. It was only in the evening that I began to suspect something was wrong. I was talking I was taking our dog Bailey out for her final walk of the day. It was nautical twilight, my favorite time to be outdoors. I've always enjoyed strolling around the block with Bailey in those last precious moments when there's still enough light to see the horizon. I put Bailey's harness on. I put Bailey's harness on her as she excitedly hopped around. Then the two of us stepped out into the cool night. After a few seconds, I looked up and noticed that the door to my neighbor's house, the one directly across the street, was still wide open. Also strange was the fact that despite her car being in the driveway, the house was completely dark, not a single light on inside. I crossed the street. My neighbor is a 20 something. I crossed the street. My neighbor is a 20-something-year-old named Isabel. She seems like a sweet girl, but we aren't exactly good friends. Sometimes I give her lemons from our tree in exchange for figs, and that's pretty much the extent of our relationship. Still, the sight of that open door made me uneasy. What if she had some kind of medical emergency and was currently unconscious, or worse, on the floor of her entryway? After a few steps up the driveway, the leash in my hand went taut. Looking down, I saw that Bailey had seated herself firmly on the ground, refusing to budge, even as I called her name and tugged on the leash. Her ears were pricked up, her eyes fixed on the house like she was waiting for something. Though she wasn't growling, I was unnerved by her alert posture and her refusal to walk any closer to the door. I let my voice close the distance between us and my neighbor's threshold. Isabel, it's Brian from across the street. Can you hear me? For a moment, there was only silence. Then, just as I was about to drop Bailey's leash and walk up the steps to the house, there came a voice from the dark. Hey, Brian, she said, before coughing once and then clearing her throat. Sorry, I'm in the middle of dinner here. What's up? I breathed a sigh of relief. Hey, sorry, I just saw that your front door was open. Wanted to make sure you knew. Strangely, there came another long pause. I knew she was inside the house now and close enough the door to hold a conversation with me, so what was the delay? Isabel? Oh, you're so sweet to check in. Yes, I know it's open. It's just been so hot today that I wanted to let the breeze in. I'll close it soon. Of course. Have a good night then. You too. With that, I tugged Bailey back down the driveway, and the two of us completed our walk. I returned home, happy that my neighbor was all right, and went to sleep. Saturday was a much needed lazy day. I woke up at 10, ate the breakfast that Alice made, and then spent some time in the backyard with her and Bailey. It was an overcast day, and by 3 p.m. or so, A light rainfall forced us back inside. Alice took a call from her sister, who lives at the edge of our neighborhood, while I went to the living room to throw on some television. Except, before I could get comfortable, I looked out the front window and was surprised to see that Isabel's front door was open again. Open again? I wondered. Or was it never shut? I got up to close the window and studied the house across the street. The rain was coming down harder by then, and the thick gray clouds overhead made it seem like a nightmare. Oh my God. The rain was coming down harder by then, and the thick gray clouds overhead made it seem like nighttime. Despite this, there wasn't a single light on inside of Isabel's house. It was so dark inside that the entrance to her house seemed less like a door and more like a black painted rectangle on the exterior wall. I turned to look at Bailey, who was laying on a couch nearby, and saw that she was also looking out the window, ears pressed against her head. She glanced at me briefly, then refocused her attention outside. I couldn't tell if she was simply people watching or if, somehow, she too could sense something wrong. Just then, Alice walked into the living room. She was no longer on the phone and greeted me with a strange, almost nervous smile. "That was an odd conversation," she said, taking a seat next to Bailey. "Everything all right?" "I don't know. Clara saw a woman peeking into her house a few nights ago." "What?" "Creepy, right? And she's not the only one. Apparently, there have been reports on her side of town, other people experiencing the same thing. Nothing was stolen and no one was hurt, at least Clara knows of, but it's still pretty weird. Let's make sure we lock up extra well tonight." My thoughts drifted to my neighbor. I asked my wife what this woman looked like. Like I said, Isabel and I weren't close, but I knew she had recently gone through a difficult breakup with a long-term boyfriend. It was far-fetched to assume a connection between Isabel and the mystery woman, but who knew? Heartbreak makes people do crazy things. Maybe there was some link between the two. Alice hesitated for a moment. "Well," she eventually said, "you know, Clara, she's got a real superstitious way about her. She's always telling stories." "What does that mean?" "It means you've got to take this with a grain of salt." When Alice relayed Clara's description of the woman, I felt a chill run down my spine. Clara said that the woman was tall and gaunt, enough so that she originally mistook her for a man. She said that her skin looked too tight across her face and that her eyes looked unnaturally deep set, as though they were too far back in her skull. Apparently, when she saw that Clara had spotted her, she had given Clara a big smile before retreating into the night. Apparently, when she smiled, she had too many teeth. I was silent for a moment, unsure what to make of Clara's morbid sighting. "Love, was Isabel's front door open this morning?" She considered my question as she pet Bailey. "I think it was. If nothing else, I figured I should at least tell Isabel to be careful." I put on my raincoat and headed outside, carefully making my way down the wet driveway. Once I made it to the sidewalk, I heard frantic barking coming from behind me. Turning around, I saw Bailey in the window, her paws resting on the sill, her growls and whimpers rising over the heavy rain. My wife appeared next to her a few seconds later. She attempted, unsuccessfully, to comfort Bailey, giving me a questioning look as she did so. I gave her a shrug in return, then crossed the street. I stopped at the bottom of Isabel's porch steps. And listened. Like before, I could hear someone inside, though I couldn't exactly tell what was going on. I heard a deep, wet, ripping sound, like something being torn. Also, like before, I couldn't see a single thing inside the house. A voice called out from the dark interior. Brian? Hello again, I said, only wondering in retrospect how she could have known it was me. Sorry to bother you again, but I wanted to tell you something. Would you mind coming out for a minute? Brian, she repeated, tone almost reprimanding. This isn't a good time. You always seem to catch me in the middle of a meal. It won't take long, I tried persuading. When she didn't respond, I climbed up a few steps. Isabel, there's been some suspicious activity around the neighborhood recently. I know you like to keep your door open for the breeze, but maybe you ought to keep it shut today. Aw, but I'm so comfortable here on the couch. Why don't you close the door for me? The couch? Wasn't she in the middle of a meal? Even if she were eating on the couch, her voice sounded so close, like she couldn't have been more than a few feet away from me. Was she hiding at the door? I climbed up the rest of the steps, trying to recall the inside of her house from the 2 or 3 times I've been inside. I knew that the room immediately to the left of the entryway was the living room, and most likely where Isabel was supposedly sitting. I also knew that there was a light switch right next to the front door. What the hell, I thought. I'll just go inside for a minute, say hello, and then shut the door for her. It'll give me some peace of mind to actually see her instead of just hearing her voice. I glanced over my shoulder towards my own house. Bailey was still barking her head off, which was unnerving, but the sight of Alice keeping an eye on me gave me some peace of mind. It was just a house, I told myself. Just a normal house with my own neighbor inside of it. Taking a deep breath, I stood at the threshold, shocked that, despite my closeness, the inside of the house remained pitch black. I thrust a hand inside and it disappeared like I dipped it into oil. As I groped around for the light switch, my fingers brushed against something solid, something fleshy. I jerked my hand back, certain that I'd just touched a person. Isabel? I asked the darkness. And then, from inches away, came the sound of laughter. The laugh was deep, gravelly, and mocking, and it did not resemble my neighbor's voice in the slightest. Before I could react, I heard the sound of quick pitter-patter of footsteps against wood. It grew quieter and quieter, and I realized it was the sound of someone running away from me. After a few seconds, I thought I heard a door open and shut in the distance. The back door, perhaps? Again, I stuck my arm inside, and this time I was able to find a light switch. I turned on the light and was relieved when the interior of the house revealed itself to me. A normal entryway with a normal coat rack and a normal shoe rack. No eerie intruders in sight. However, the relief was short-lived because when I stepped inside the house, I turned to the left, walked into the living room, and was greeted by the sight of my neighbor, or at least what was left of her. She was splayed out atop a couch, her head lolled off to the side, her eye sockets empty, and toothless, wide-open mouth looked like 3 holes had been dug into her face. Her face itself was red, not as I initially thought, because it was covered in blood, but because it was missing its skin. Okay, actually, cut this paragraph out. We're gonna redo this. I feel like I could do a better tone for it, okay? She was splayed out atop a couch, her head lolled off the side. Her empty eye sockets and toothless, wide-open mouth looked like 3 holes had been dug into her face. Her face itself was red, Not as I initially thought, because it was covered in blood, but because it was missing its skin. She had been flayed, not only her face, but her arms and the top part of her torso. It looked like someone had methodically worked their way down her body until I had interrupted them. Paralyzed by fear and confusion, I stood in place. I waited to wake up from a nightmare. I waited for Isabel to walk in from the adjoining room and tell me I was looking at a Halloween prop. I waited for a dangerously long time, and then I staggered out into the rain. When I returned home, I immediately called the police. Though I had trouble putting what I had seen into words, they arrived quickly, took my and Alice's statements, and then went across the street to investigate. It's been days now. They haven't told me anything, despite my repeated calls to the station. I can't get answers, can't sleep, can't eat. I just keep replaying the discovery over and over in my mind's eye. The voice, the feeling of brushing against a body in the dark, and of course, the sight of that poor girl's mangled corpse. I have too many questions to count, but three rise above the rest. Who the hell was I talking to? How did they sound so perfectly like my neighbor? And why is it that every night since I found the body, Bailey hasn't stopped sitting by the front door and growling? Oh, that was creepy. That was creepy. Now that's a horror story. Now that's a horror story. Oh my God. Damn. I feel like this one was pretty well written. The suspense that it builds up along the entire way, and it just keeps you there until the final reveal in the last paragraph. And not only that, after the final paragraph, there's no like resolution. There's no happily ever after like the previous story. It's just this guy is next. He messed with the wrong thing and it's coming for him now. But oh my God. That would be terrifying, man. Imagine it's nighttime and you're like in your living room and you just look at the window and there's just this pale, gaunt woman smiling at you with way too many teeth. Like that I feel like that, let alone like the corpse, is one of the most terrifying parts. Like for me, what makes a story really scary isn't like the big reveal of, oh my goodness, like she's dead. You know, it's the uncertainty, the unsettling aspect that you don't know if this thing is supernatural. We're assuming so because it can perfectly replicate Isabel's voice, but what if it's just some psycho serial killer home squatter? Someone breaking into your house. It can happen. It does happen. It happens all the time. So you truly never really know, right? You truly never really know. But yeah, I feel like this story was very well done. The whole way through while I was reading it, you know, it was descriptive enough to the point where it felt realistic, but it wasn't super over the top with like trying to include a bunch of super detailed adjectives and descriptors to the point where you're kind of like, okay, this is like very, very fictional. But yeah, it was a very creepy story overall. So I like this one. This one was good. I think so far probably the best one that we've read. And let's see some of these comments. What did it say? Oh my, better move. Keep the moving a secret or put on a surveillance camera. Remember to get a new dog too. Okay, I don't know about getting a new dog. Oh, true. That's one thing I was thinking about. if this woman has been creeping all over the other side of town, looking into people's like windows and stuff like that, how has no one caught her on the security camera? Or maybe they have, and like the police department's just in on it. I don't know if I get a new dog. That's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy. But I also feel like this guy has no sense of self-preservation. Like if you're right in front of a doorway, it's completely dark, you can't see inside. Are you gonna A, walk in, B, stick your hand in there and feel around, or are you gonna, I don't know, take out your phone and like switch on the flashlight or something like that? Like I feel like, I don't know, that was crazy. Just like sticking his hand into the dark. We have phones and they have flashlights for a reason now, but yes, perfect horror movie protagonist. That is true. That is true. That is true. This was a good one, though. This was a good one. Let's see if we can continue up the trend with this fourth story, which is called I Was Hired as a Substitute Teacher. I'm not sure what I'm teaching. And this is from Psychonaut1008. I lost my job last year after the divorce. My ex-wife's father owned the company. He let me go with a modest severance package. It was a dark time. For about 6 months, I drank, morning until night. A slow, pathetic suicide. It's harder than it seems. Killing yourself, I mean. Every morning, I'd wake up like some malfunctioning phoenix. I just wanted it to be over, to descend into sweet darkness and feel nothing. Then, in September, my debit card was declined. That sound, the scratch that the machine made, indicating I had no money. That even here, amongst my derelict peers, I was on the bottom. I began to look for jobs, any jobs. I found it on Craigslist. Substitute teacher, gifted/special education. I've never been a kid person. Don't like them, don't hate them, but I was desperate. Driving through the long, winding road to the school was like being transported in time. Jeffersonian buildings evoked a Virginian antebellum aesthetic. Tall, majestic oaks lent their shadows in the summer heat. Everyone in the area knew the school. Private, elite, graduates went to Yale, Harvard, Wharton. 2 vice presidents and 1 Speaker of the House were alumni. My Camry fell out of place in the parking lot, but like I said, I was desperate. When I walked in, the receptionist looked at me, knowing. You're here for this substitute teaching job? I nodded. Come with me. She walked down a long hall. I followed. We stopped at a large industrial door with a keypad. The numbers beeped, echoing down the hall as she typed in a code. An airlock whooshed as the door opened and steps down into an underground area. She stopped at the top of the stairs, motioned for me to continue down. This is as far as I go. I hesitated. Something wasn't right. This didn't add up. She sensed it. We pay in cash, daily. I'm not proud of it, but like I said, I was desperate. What? I began. Instructions are on the table. She turned and walked out, the door humming as it closed, settling into place with a clank. The air compressors kicked in, sealing the door. My footsteps were muted as I went down, like something was absorbing the sound. At the bottom, a small hallway stretched out to another door, round like a hobbit door. Curious now, I walked towards it. My hands caressed it. Thick, rich wood, warm to the touch. It felt alive. To the left of the door was a small cubby with a paper. It simply read, Rules. Underneath, these children are special children, scholarship students who board at Westlake. For their success and your safety, the following rules must be followed. Number 1. When the children start whispering, do not turn your back on them. Number 2. The nurse will take them out sometimes. When they come back, do not make eye contact for 15 minutes. Number 3. Do not try and help them after their nurse's visit. Number 4. Insubordination must immediately be punished by pressing the button. Number 5. Your payment is in the envelope. Do not take it until the day is done. Failure to adhere will absolve management of responsibility for harm. Weird, but there was an envelope under the end sheet with 7 crisp $100 bills. The lure of quick cash overrid any misgivings. The lure of quick cash overrid any misgivings I had. Just then, the bell rang. I walked to the hobbit door, which was now cracked open. Inside was a classroom. Oddly enough, the children filed in from another entrance. 27 of them, second graders. They seemed normal, just a little quiet. The folder on my desk had my lesson plans for the day. I began teaching. At around 10 a.m., the children had recess. They exited their door. I watched through They exited their door. I watched through the window as they ran outside, onto a lawn, and began running back and forth. Suddenly, it struck me. We were underground. Or so I thought. How was this level with the ground outside? Maybe the rear of the school went downhill, and I just hadn't noticed it as I came in. When they came back, their energy was lower. I was writing on the chalkboard when it started, a faint whispering, like the rustling of fall leaves. My hand froze on the chalkboard. I tried to turn, but I was stuck. The whispering grew, like bees, angry, humming, swarming. The lights dimmed, taking on a late evening glow. Heart hammering, I summoned all my will and moved my head about a quarter of an inch. On the edge of my vision, a shadowy form loomed where the first desk was. As I looked, it coalesced into one of the students. The whispering grew angry, but I felt its grip on me loosen. I moved my head further, and more shadowy forms congealed? Is that a word? Congealed into young children. I wrenched my neck, facing the class. The sound shattered, and everything came to normal. The lights brightened, and after a long moment, one of the boys raised his hand. Yes? I didn't know his name. Johnny, he said. Yes, Johnny, I replied. The answer is 7. It took me a moment, then it struck me. He was solving the problem I had written on the board. Like nothing had ever happened. That's correct, I stammered. Just then, the bell rang. I looked at the clock. Somehow it was 2:45. Dismissal time. 2.5 hours had just disappeared. I watched as these children, who had just moments ago been something else, as they stood up and ran out the door. I felt lucky to be alive. Grabbed the envelope, ran up the stairs, through the compression of the doors. As I walked out, I saw her. She looked surprised. You're alive? I nodded. Yes. Okay. See you tomorrow? She asked. I touched the wad of cash in my pocket. Thought about the party I'd be throwing tonight. Yes, I said, walking into the afternoon. The sun was warm, but as I looked at the school, my heart skipped in my chest. Behind it, hills rose into the Blur Ridge Mountains. The wind blew. The rustle of the leaves felt like a whisper. My blood ran cold. I needed a drink. Um, Can we do another story? I feel like that was missing something. I don't know. I feel like that was like an incomplete story. Like number one, it had this thing that like the adjective thing, you know, that I was talking about, where it just tries to use way too descriptive words for the setting of the story that just like completely throws off the vibe. Like, since it's from the point of view of a person narrating it as if it's like their own experience, when you suddenly just start switching to like extremely formal like vocabulary, it just completely throws it off. Like I know people talk like that, but certainly not, you know, the main character of this story. Second of all, like we got all the rules. I think like the premise of the story is interesting, you know, as a substitute teacher in like this creepy school. But, you know, the rules we're talking about, okay, don't turn your back on the children, which we did see that. But like a lot of the other rules we're talking about punished by pressing the button. And then 2 out of 5 of the rules we're talking about the nurse. So basically 3 out of 5 of these rules never even, you know, were present in the story. So it's kind of like, okay, what was that? What's up with the nurse? What's the button? Like it's just completely unfounded. And I know there's, you know, that aspect that it's supposed to be left to the unknown, you know, let the reader's imagination take over, fill in the blanks, but this just felt kind of incomplete. So I don't know. You guys think we should just remove this story? Should I just try get another one here? Damn, I should have read all these all the way through. I just went with the ones that looked like they had a lot of comments and upvotes. This might be a skip. Let's see. Okay, how did I transition in here? Let me check. Okay, you know what? I think we could cut this entire story out. I think we could cut this entire story out. True, I should have let you guys submit stories. We could have done viewer horror stories. Okay, let's do this one. I don't think this is nearly as creepy as the third story, but I did read this one and it was fine. So actually, I feel like this story didn't really make sense. Hmm. I try to see if the person who put up the last story about the neighbor's front door has posted anything else. Oh, I see one. Okay, yeah, let's do this. Okay. Okay, editor, we're gonna cut out the entire last story about the substitute teacher, and we're just gonna slot it in with a transition where I say, with this next story, which is called, and then we're gonna replace it with this one. Okay, we're gonna replace it with this one. Which is called, My Neighbor Has Been Beckoning My Children from His Window at Night. And this is actually also a story by the same person who posted the previous one, being, of course, 11 Velociraptors. Sorry, give me a sec. Okay. I, 33 male, live in Texas with my daughter, Alicia, 8 female, and my son, Jay, 4 male. I, lo- I love how Reddit stories always have the parentheses 33M. Their mom has been out of the picture for the past 2 years. Not dead, just a piece of S word. And I've managed pretty well as a single father. The three of us lived in a 2-bedroom in a nice neighborhood. I've got a solid job, and the kids are thankfully healthy. Everything was smooth sailing until one night, 2 months ago, during which I was awoken by Jay poking me in the face. He was sobbing violently. Though I recognized it as the I'm afraid kind of crying, as opposed to the I'm hurt kind of crying, which made me feel a little less worried. Jay's always been nighttime prone, so I assumed that's what was causing him distress. Oh, sorry. Okay, well, we're gonna redo this sentence or this paragraph. Everything was smooth sailing until one night 2 months ago, during which I was awoken by Jay poking me in the face. He was sobbing violently, though I recognized it as the I'm afraid kind of crying as opposed to the I'm hurt kind of crying, which made me feel a little less worried. Jay's always been nightmare prone, so I assumed that's what was causing him distress. When I asked him what was wrong, though, he said, The man in the next house is making scary faces at me. I'd heard my fair share of Jay's stories about monsters terrorizing him from the dark corners of his bedroom, but this was something new. I assumed he meant our neighbor's house, and the lack of fantastical elements in his description made me uneasy. It felt a little too specific to be one of his usual nightmares. I got out of bed and walked with Jay. I got out of bed and walked with Jay in tow to my kids' room. Alicia was awake in the top bunk. From the soft glow of their nightlight, I could see her crossing her arms and scowling down at her little brother. I didn't turn on any lights to give myself a better view of the outdoors and peered out the bedroom window. Their window had curtains on it, but for once, they hadn't been drawn all the way, and there was a small opening between them through which Jay must have looked out. One side of the neighbor's house, the one to our left from the street, was visible from Alicia and Jay's room. There were two windows on the neighbor's side of the house, but it was too dark inside to see anything. I recalled from what I'd seen in the daylight that the windows on the left, the ones closest to the front of the house, was the kitchen. I wasn't sure what the window on the right was, as it always had its curtains drawn. I asked Alicia if she had seen anything, and she shook her head. He's always having nightmares and crying. I don't want to share a room with him anymore, Dad. I never get any sleep. It's not fair. Of course, hearing that made Jay start crying again, so I let him sleep in my room for the night. He has this TMNT indoor camping tent that he prefers to his actual bed. Honestly, at that point, I half suspected his nightmare to be a ploy to get me to let him camp. Anyway, I guess I'm a total pushover because he slept in that tent in my room for the next 2 nights. On the third night, I was again woken up, but this time by Alicia, who was standing over me and shaking my arm. That kid hadn't woken me up in the middle of the night for years. When I asked her what was wrong, she said, the neighbor was making faces at me. Actually, what would a kid's tone be like? The neighbor was making faces at me. Those words and the fear in my daughter's voice really put me on edge. I closed the curtains when I said goodnight. Did you open them? Only a little, but it's because I heard a weird noise. What did you hear? Alicia couldn't recall exactly. According to her, she had gotten out of bed to see what was going on, and when she lifted the curtain, she saw a light on in the neighbor's window. The curtains in the back room had been drawn back, and our neighbor was standing in his house, right up against the window frame. What was he doing? Alicia thought for a moment, then made an expression I never want to see on my child's face, or anyone else's face for that matter, ever again. Actually, redo the sentence. Alicia thought for a moment, and then made an expression I never want to see on my child's face, or anyone else's for that matter, ever again. I won't do it justice just by describing it, but it looked something like this. First, she smiled with both sets of teeth, so that there was a little open sliver between the two rows. And then she furrowed her eyebrows. She inclined her head towards me, kind of Kubrick stare-esque, and strained the muscles in her neck. The worst part, though, was what she did with her hands. She held out her left arm, forearm up. Then she clenched her right hand into a fist and moved it back and forth rapidly over her forearm. Orthing described it as playing the violin, but it seemed pretty obvious that my neighbor was pantomiming cutting. Disturbed, I told Alicia to stop, not make either the expression or the gesture again. I was angry and confused. My neighbor, a man in his 40s, was a bit of a recluse, but he had seemed normal enough in the 3 or 4 times I'd spoken to him. I couldn't fathom why he would do something like this to my kids. After asking Alicia a few more questions, I realized that my neighbor might not have done anything technically, or at least legally wrong. It wasn't against the law to make inappropriate gestures in your own home, but it seemed like he was targeting my kids specifically. Legal or not, I plan to have a little chat with him the following morning. My last question to Alicia was if our neighbor had made any other gestures, and she nodded. Then she started making beckoning, come here motions with both of her hands. I had Alicia sleep in my room for the night as well. I also checked out the window in my kids' room, but like before, I saw nothing. The house was completely dark. The next morning, before work, and after dropping Alicia and Jay off to school, I spent a good 5 minutes knocking on my neighbor's front door. I figured he was home since his car was in the driveway, but he never answered the door. Eventually, I had to leave for work, and as I was walking away, I turned around quickly to see if he was watching me. He was. The coward. I saw him for a split second at the front window before he ducked beneath the sill and out of view. Clearly, the guy had problems. I yelled at him to stop messing around with us and then left. That same night, I put a plan in motion. While my kids slept in my room, I hung out in theirs. It was a Friday night, and I was ready to pull an all-nighter so that I could catch my neighbor in the act. Though I trusted my kids, I wanted to confirm that there was actually something nefarious going on before I escalated things. I made sure the house was locked up and the curtains drawn, tucked my kids in, and sat on the floor under the window in their room. At around 9, I started marathoning midnight mass on my phone. I didn't want to wear headphones and miss any strange sounds, so I kept the volume low and mostly read subtitles. At midnight, I started to hear strange sounds. Like Alicia said, it's a bit hard to describe. Best I can do is that it was this low, repeated clicking sound. You know the sound you make when you beckon a horse? I'm sorry, I have no idea what that means. I hope that was the right sound. It was something like that. All I knew is that the sound was undoubtedly coming from a person. After a few minutes of this, the sound switched to what I think was supposed to be a whistle, but it came out all wrong, like someone sucking breath in through their teeth. The sound was so crisp that the neighbor's window must have been open, which was an unsettling thought given that there were only around 15 feet of space between our houses. Certain that the neighbor was at his window and that this was my best chance to see him, I stood up and pulled the curtain back in one motion. I saw him right away. There was a dim light on in his room, allowing me to see that horrible expression Alicia had made the night prior. It was one thing to see my child's recreation, but it was far more frightening on an adult. His window was indeed open, and his arms were stuck out into the cold night, violently swiping against each other in a grotesque mimicry. Oh my god. His window was indeed open, and his arms were stuck out into the cold night, violently swiping against each other in a grotesque mimicry of self-harm. When he saw me and realized he was looking at another grown man and not some poor child, he stopped his erratic motions. His cartoonish grin faded, and another, more genuine emotion settled over his features. Rage. The man grabbed the window and slammed it shut, then closed the curtains with the same forcefulness. I let my own curtain fall. I was a little shell-shocked, I think. Of course, I was perturbed by the sight of the man, by his face and his movement, and the fact that he had been doing that for who knows how many nights now in an attempt to frighten my kids. However, another detail stuck out as even more concerning to me, which was the fact that I genuinely wasn't sure if the man I had just seen was my neighbor. I'd seen him so few times in the years I'd lived in the house, and I was having trouble conjuring up his face. I sat on the floor for a minute, my blood thundering in my ears. I definitely had enough evidence at that point to call the cops, right? Just as I was about to pull out my phone, I heard a tremendous smack against the glass of the bedroom window. After a brief hesitation, I pulled the curtain back again. There were no lights on in the neighbor's house, and there was also no one outside from what I could see. I pulled the curtains back a little further and saw a handprint in the top corner of the window pane. It was worth noting that our house is on a raised foundation, and that particular window is very tall. So even though the window is on the first floor, a man outside would have needed an insane vertical to get his hand up there. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. As I explained the situation to them, I quickly walked around the house to see if I could catch a glimpse of the man. My last stop was my bedroom. Once inside, I locked the doors, and while still on the phone with the operator, I took out my handgun from the safe in my closet. My heart was beating out of my damn chest, but I knew I had to stay calm, even more so when I saw that Alicia was awake and looking out of the tent at me. I reassured her in as few words as I could, whispering that we were okay, but we had to stay very quiet. I sat on the edge of my bed, my firearm ready and my ears straining. My kid's tent was in the corner, and to the left of the tent, in the middle of the wall, and directly across from where I sat, was a window. After what felt like an eternity, I saw something. It was a cloudless night, and the moonlight was bright enough that I could see a silhouette through the white curtains. Dark shape was nebulous at first, but it became more clear as the man outside stepped closer to the window. Somehow, he knew which room we were in. The silhouette didn't move for several minutes, and I remember being thankful that, from that angle at which she sat, Alicia couldn't see it. Then, something happened that I couldn't entirely wrap my head around. The man stepped back from the glass and raised his arms, making a Y shape with his body and his limbs. Only his arms were far too long. They seemed to be double the length that they should have been, each arm about the same length as his entire body. I thought at first that he was holding onto something, maybe two pipes that had just appeared to be the extension of his limbs, but I could clearly see two hands at the ends of the extremities. I could see 5 fingers on each hand, flopping around slightly as the man brought his arms closer to the window. Thud, thud, thud. I stood up and readied myself to shoot. But just then, the si- but just then, the sounds of sirens pierced the quiet night. The man outside banged his hands against the windows one last time, and then, as if someone had sliced off his arms at the elbows, his forearms seemed to shear right off, and the man took off running before they so much as hit the ground. When the police officers announced themselves, I answered the door and explained the situation to them. 2 officers, a man and a woman, asked me a few questions about my neighbor, which I assume was necessary to establish probable cause for a search. Once finished, they told me to stay inside with the doors locked as they investigated the neighbor's house. I watched them through the window of Alicia and Jay's room. They knocked on the neighbor's door, and when no one answered, they tried the front door handle. I watched the unlocked door swing open. The 2 looked at one another and then entered. I'm not sure what they found inside that house. All I know is, when they emerged a few moments later, they both looked very disturbed. When I went outside to ask what they had found, the female officer simply told me, "Your neighbor's dead." The rest of the night was a blur of strangers in uniforms filing in and out of my neighbor's home. Some came to my porch afterward to ask me questions, and none offered me any answers. They moved with tight-lipped efficiency, their faces guarded, their words clipped. At one point, I wandered to the side of the house and found several people photographing something on the ground outside my bedroom window. Before they could ask me to leave, I made out the gruesome shape of 2 human arms. The kids and I have been staying in my parents' apartment for months, and I think everyone, even Jay, is getting tired of the cramped living situation. We can't stay in the house. Alicia is way too traumatized for that, and I wouldn't be comfortable staying there while the murderer is still at large anyway. I want to sell the damn house, but our story going semi-viral is making that difficult. After all, who would want a house, thanks to the news, has become permanently associated with phrases like dismemberment and days of torture and victim barely recognizable as human. Ugh. That is kind of creepy, I can't lie. Honestly, this really reminds me of like a similar situation as the previous story, which I guess makes sense considering it's, the same person posted it, but yeah, same situation with like your neighbor who's been replaced and then they find out at the end that the real neighbor is actually dead. So I guess what actually happened was the person that was making gestures to his children, they weren't actually the neighbor, right? This person is someone who's killed their neighbor and cut off their arms, which is why he was making like those cutting gestures towards his children. And in the end, it wasn't that he had extra long arms. It was that he was using the arms of the neighbor and holding them as props to bang on the window. Honestly, this story is very disturbing, I can't lie. Like, it's very similar to the previous story in the way that, like I mentioned, the neighbors finding out that they're, passed away and something's maybe mimicking them. But what separates this story is there's no supernatural element to this. In the previous story, there was the pitch black darkness, the perfect mimicry of the voice. But this one is just disturbing in almost like a true crime kind of fashion. But once again, I think, the build up very, very suspenseful and the overall premise of the story extremely dark and disturbing. So, yeah, I don't know what's up with this user 11 Velociraptors, but they they really don't seem to like their neighbors. I guess, I guess you can say that much. They really got something against their neighbors, huh? Well, hey, if I had neighbors like this too, I would also be traumatized. But we do have one final story here to end things off on. And this one is called My Wife is Convinced That I've Been Replaced. Please help me. I don't know what to do. And this is from user Faith Killing. Also, I suppose, once again, I guess the unsung theme of connection with the stories today is the fact that these are all about people who have been replaced. It's all about imposters. So, hey, I guess we got that going. Okay. Sorry, give me a second. Okay, let's do this. I think this is actually, I don't know which one's the longest story of the day. Might be this one. Yes, it probably sounds insane. I should start with the backstory. God, how hard is it to remember the simple, happy times before everything that happened? I met my wife, Catherine, when she was 24 and I was 28. We lived in a small town in Kentucky. You'd have trouble finding it, even with a map, and the population was tiny. Everyone knew each other. I'd worked as an electrician all my life, first at a factory, then I started my own small business. Repairs, wiring, private jobs. My love life had never really worked out until I met her. She worked as an elementary school teacher, smiled at every child, was kind and polite to everyone. My Catherine was the only ray of light in the darkness around me. I loved her for her simplicity. She could find joy in the most ordinary things: a morning coffee, the smell of wet grass, a cheap movie on the couch. We didn't have much money, but we had peace, a home, a dog, and that feeling that everything was right, that everything would be fine. I spent evenings fixing things while she wrote lesson plans or knitted. Sometimes we'd sit in silence, listening to crickets, or stay up all night talking about everything and nothing, thinking about children and what we'd name them. Back then, it felt like life had finally found its meaning. The problems began maybe 2 months ago. At first, small things. She started having trouble sleeping, then began looking at me strangely, as if my face disturbed her. I asked if everything was okay, and she laughed. Sorry, just tired. The kids at school are driving me crazy. Gradually, though, I can't even say exactly when it got worse. She slept less, not because she had insomnia, but because she was afraid to fall asleep. I asked her what was wrong, but she said she was fine. Still, when we lay together, she'd suddenly get up and go into another room, returning only at dawn. She started having nightmares, but never told me what they were. One day, I lost my temper. You have to understand, I was just worried about my wife. From the lack of sleep, she started to look worse: dark circles under her eyes, red eyes, pale skin. She lost weight, and every time I tried to help, she pushed me away. So I sat her down across from me and directly asked what she was dreaming about. She was silent for a long time, trembling and glancing at me furtively. Oh, furtively? She was silent for a long time, trembling and glancing at me furtively, as if she was afraid. Then, when tears began to roll down her cheeks, she whispered, "There's a man in my dreams. God, I'm scared, Tom." I went to hug her, and when I reached for her, she flinched, as if I'd frightened her. After that, things seemed to get better, or so I thought. How wrong I was. She used to ha- she used to ask how my day went, but now she just stares out the window. With each passing day, she spoke to me less and less. Her, sh- her words short and dry, and then she'd go to the bathroom or kitchen for some errands, closing the door behind her. And it wasn't just the silence. Her eyes had changed. If before they were green, emerald like, full of life and love, now her gaze made my spine go cold. There wasn't anger or hatred there. No, it was something closer to mistrust, wariness, as if she was seeing me for the first time. Over the next week, I began to feel anxious, a strange burning under my skin, as if something was wrong, but I couldn't tell where the crack was until I realized she was studying me. When I drank coffee, I could feel her eyes on me. I'd look up and she'd immediately turn away, pretending to slice fruit, but her fingers trembled and the knife froze halfway to the board. I'd step outside for a smoke, and when I turned around, I'd see her peeking through the curtain. Then she'd instantly close it. When I showered, I'd catch her watching me, studying my body. Then she'd run away. She started doing it even while I slept. She almost stopped talking to me. Instead of writing something in a notebook, oh, she stopped. She almost stopped talking to me. Instead, writing something in a notebook and hiding it as soon as I entered the room. Photos began to disappear from their frames. She'd talk on the phone with someone, but hang up the moment I came in. I made an appointment with a psychologist for us, but she refused, saying she was afraid to be near me. It all happened so suddenly. It seemed like just yesterday we were stargazing in each other's arms, and now this. The strangeness grew every day. Sometimes she asked me to sleep on the couch. I agreed, hoping it would calm her, but it was useless. Her paranoia only worsened. It got to the point where, when I tried to hug her, she screamed, "Don't come near me!" And I flinched as if I'd hit her. After one of those nights, I decided I had to find out what was really going on, even if it meant taking her to a doctor afterwards. I pretended to be asleep when she stood in the hallway. Then she slowly approached, soft, careful steps. She stopped at the foot of the bed, and for several seconds, there was a dead silence, broken only by her uneven breathing. I could feel her watching. Not just watching, comparing. That's when I became truly terrified. That's when I became truly terrified. A cold dread twisting inside me as my wife became something I couldn't recognize. Then the bed shifted slightly as she sat down on the edge. The air grew heavy. I could feel her stare physically, like pressure on my skin. Then her cold fingers gently touched my wrist, held it for a few seconds, then quickly let go, as if burned, whispered, "Pulse faster than Tom's." My heart clenched so hard I nearly twitched. She leaned closer. I could hear her breathing against my face, short, shaky. She smelled of lavender and something sour that made goosebumps crawl down my back. Her lips barely moved. "I remember clearly. Tom had a small scar right here." She touched my cheek. "But you don't." Clenched my teeth to keep from gasping. Those few seconds of silence lasted an eternity. What scar? I'd never had a scar on my cheek. I'd know if I did. I wanted to sink into the ground and scream all at once, but I kept lying still till I heard a choked sob and her fading footsteps. The door slammed. I opened my eyes, my heart pounding furiously. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night, too afraid to close my eyes. The next morning, I went to work early, dreading the hours until my shift ended. That evening, over dinner, I said, "Kate, we need to talk. What's going on?" She gripped her fork so tightly her knuckles turned white, then looked me dead in the eye. "Tom, you've been acting strange." "What do you mean?" I don't know. Sometimes you look different. Sometimes your voice sounds wrong. You even smell different." I didn't know what to say. My head was chaos, and somehow I just laughed. "Kate, maybe you're just imagining things." "I don't know, Tom." My eyes fell on the knife rack. There was a clean strip of dust where the largest kitchen knife should have been the one. I'm sorry, this guy needs to put periods in his sentences. there, there is a distinct lack of punctuation here that's making it a little difficult to read. Okay. My eyes fell on the knife rack. There was a clean strip of dust where the largest kitchen knife should have been. The one we used for everything: bread, meat, anything. I distinctly remembered it was there before that night. My heart slammed into my throat with a primal panic. I looked at Kate. She was staring right at me. I wanted to speak, but couldn't. It hit me right then that my wife might be planning to kill me. Ugh, I need a sneeze. I can't though. The next morning, she left for work, and I, like a caged animal, started searching the house. I hadn't slept in nearly 48 hours. I know I should have just left or taken her to a hospital, but she's my wife. I love her. She has to see that I am me. I tore through the apartment, frantic, desperate to find anything that would help me understand what was happening to her. And I did. After about an hour, in the back of the closet behind a pile of sweaters, I found her wooden box, old, slightly cracked. The lid was ajar, and when I opened it, a thick notebook fell into my hands. It smelled of coffee and sweat. Her initials on the cover, written in her neat cursive. My heart froze as I realized it was the diary she had been hiding from me. The paper bent under my fingers, her handwriting familiar, but this time jagged, shaky. The page stained with what looked like tears. He's been sleeping. Stand by the bed and watch. He looks like Tom, but he's not. Tom had a scar on his left hand from that accident by the river. This one's skin is smooth. He smiles, but the smile doesn't reach his eyes. Something replaced him. I keep counting days, marking steps. If the real Tom, my husband, is alive, where is he? A wave of nausea rose in my throat. With each page, her handwriting grew more erratic. I tested his speech. He says, I love you with the same tone, but without warmth, not like before. Tom smelled of vanilla, but this one smells of dust and cheap cologne. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My knees trembled. The air around me tightened like a noose. I flipped to the last page. I can't let this thing stay in our house. It wears his smile, his name. I tried talking to it, begging, but it just smiled and said all the right words. It didn't defend itself. Maybe because it's afraid? Its right hand twitches when it lies. I could have killed it today, but for some reason, I couldn't. I know I have to. For Tom, I won't let some monster wear his skin. My hands were slick with sweat. My whole body was sweating, even though the room was cold. I placed the diary on the bed and sat down, trying to process everything I just read. An accident? God, she was exaggerating. All that came out of it was a concussion and some bruised ribs. I stayed in the hospital for about a week. Yeah, 7 days. Then my phone rang, making me jump. It was Sheriff Martin, a kind old man I'd known for years. Tom, everything all right there? Catherine called, said someone's living in your house and pretending to be her husband? I froze. What did you say? Says you're not you. I've known her for years, always seemed stable. Domestic quarrel, huh? No, just stress. She's tired. Evening came slowly. I sat on the couch, elbows on my knees, looking at an old photograph, the one that used to sit on our mantle before all this. Catherine and I by the lake, smiling, her arms around me. The sun so bright that day we had to squint. I stared at us, at the little details, her blonde hair catching the light, her hand around mine, the green shimmer in our eyes. It felt like a lifetime ago. When the door creaked open, I nearly jumped. My wife's, if I can still call her that, steps were slow and tired, her bag thudding softly to the floor. She looked exhausted, her eyes red. her hair a mess. I stood, holding the diary. Kate, we need to talk. She looked at me warily, like a trapped animal sensing a snare. What's that in your hand? Her voice was even, but something trembled in it. I found this. I need to understand what's happening, I said, showing her the diary. Catherine froze. For a moment, I thought she'd break down crying, but instead, she stepped closer, looking straight into my face, her cold breath brushing against my skin. So, what did you figure out, Tom? That I'm crazy? You think I've lost my mind, don't you? No, you wrote that I've been replaced, that I don't have a scar. She turned away, her lips pressed tight. Tom had one. We even joked it made him look tougher. Listen, sweetheart. I took a step closer, a strange knot tightening in my gut. I'm the same man. I remember everything. How we met, the candles at our wedding, how you laugh when we watch comedies, what you said about that stupid show when we finished it. I remember everything, Catherine. It's me. She stared at me, unblinking, her shoulders trembling as if she were freezing. I looked into her eyes, and there was something there. Pain and horror mixed together, as if I stood before her as someone both familiar and wrong. You say it like you've rehearsed it, she whispered. Because it's true. I stepped closer, my voice cracking into a shout. What do I have to do for you to believe me? What? Catherine said nothing, just breathed heavily, like she was fighting herself, staring into my eyes. Then she suddenly backed away, step by step, towards her bag. I didn't realize what was happening at first. She bent down, as if for a handkerchief, and in the next moment, I saw the glint of metal, a knife, the missing one. Kate, I breathed, disbelieving. Catherine, put it down. Stop pretending, you monster. I managed a half step towards her. She raised her hand. At first, I thought she was only threatening me. Panic tightened my fist. I wanted to yell, to grab her shoulders, to make her listen. But then, a strike. Burning pain slashed through my chest. Everything went white. The last thing I saw was her face, so familiar, twisted by terror and despair at once. She stood over me, her hand trembling, her lips whispering something like, Mom, where are you, my love? Then everything went dark. I woke up in a hospital. At first, nothing but fog, the smell of antiseptic, the faint beep of a monitor, unfamiliar voices. I tried to move my head. Pain shot through my body. The doctor explained I'd lost a lot of blood, but somehow survived. The knife missed my heart by an inch. Catherine had run away. I listened, not believing any of it was real. A couple days later, Martin came by. When I told him about the knife, the diary, her thinking I wasn't me, he listened, frowning, taking notes. When he finished and was about to leave, he turned back. Didn't expect this from Catherine. Don't worry, we'll find her. When you're discharged, come by my place. I got some Cuban cigars from a friend. We'll relax a bit. Without thinking, I said, I don't smoke. He frowned, about to say something, but then just nodded and left, closing the door behind him. For several minutes, I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to come to terms with everything that had happened. Then, I noticed a small mirror in the corner of my room. I looked at my reflection and froze. My face was pale, my lips dry, but that wasn't what caught my attention. Interesting. Eyes change color from green to blue? And that is the final story of the night. What did you guys think? What did you guys think? Yeah, cliffhanger, huh? Cliffhanger. Who do we believe here? Who do we believe? Who's real? Who's not? Who's been replaced, if anyone at all? Is this a case of descent into mental madness? Or is this a case of the narrator slowly being replaced without them realizing it? Now, I don't think either of them are truly, too reliable of, as narrators. So I don't know if you can actually, believe any of them. Capgras syndrome is a real thing. What is this? A rare delusional disorder where a person believes that a familiar individual, such as a close relative or friend, has been replaced by an identical imposter. Oh. But is this a case of the syndrome? Or has this guy truly been replaced? Because I think there are some clues. Obviously, the most important one being at the end of the story, his eyes changed from green to blue. I don't think that's something that happens with this syndrome. There's also the fact that, the sheriff offered some Cuban cigars and he says, I don't smoke without thinking about it. But earlier in the story, we clearly read a passage where his wife is observing him as he's taking a smoke break. So it could be a case of both, or maybe the true revelation that we're supposed to be getting as the horror at the end is the fact that this guy has truly been replaced, but for some reason, still retains all his memories. Someone said, the real horror is Sheriff Martin's way of handling a distressed wife's call about a domestic issue. Facts. Like, this guy's wife calls saying her husband's been replaced and the sheriff suspects a domestic issue and just calls the husband and is like, oh, domestic quarrel, huh? I guess the sheriff is technically like familiar with both of them. Maybe that's why, but I don't know, man. Very creepy. Very creepy indeed. Yeah, he got his body switched or something. But ladies and gentlemen, that is indeed the final story of the night. So I hope you have enjoyed this episode of Reddit Horror Stories. I will say, some of them a little bit more suspenseful, not necessarily horror, but I think we truly did ramp up at the end. Story number 3, 4, and 5, all very, very interesting. And hopefully you guys found some sort of entertainment out of it. Hopefully I did some sort of justice narrating these stories. I won't lie, I only read through about half of them before we started this episode, and then some of them also had typos as well as some confusing punctuation. So I hope we managed to get the tone down for the most part. But yeah, let me know if you did enjoy this episode. Let me know if you'd like to see episode 5, another episode in the future of Reddit Horror Stories. But yeah, let me know down below in the comments. Thank you very, very much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in next one. Have a wonderful Halloween. Bye. And never trust your neighbors, I suppose. Oh my God. 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, there we go. Damn, that took 2.5 hours. Oh my god. Why'd that take so long? That did not feel like... Okay, I don't think the actual story reading part was 2.5. That was still like 2 hours though. Oh my god. Yeah, that was 2 hours. I mean, I know we did like take a break in the middle, but damn. Kinda took a while. Laura, thank you for the 37 months, by the way. Princess Kenshin, 10 months as well. Appreciate that. Naka, 47 months. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, bulging frog eyes. If you took anything away from the story, let it be bulging frog eyes. Indeed. All right. Check Wua Twitter. Why? I saw Chisa drip marketing yesterday. Is there something else? Oh, she's here. Eh. I mean, about time. When was the last... When was our last 4-star character in that game? Almost as long as HSR. Kind of crazy. Well, I mean, who knows if she's a 4-star, right? But... Holy... Verona's, thank you for the tier 1, by the way. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, y'all. I think I'm gonna call it here for the stream. Damn. I thought that would take maybe an hour to get through the stories. Kind of underestimated how long it takes to narrate stuff, but no worries. We will be back again tomorrow for another Silent Hill session, I hope. So, yeah, glad we got this story, or not this story, but this video filmed at the very least. It's been fun. It's been very fun. Appreciate you guys for joining me as always. But yeah, expect probably a longer session tomorrow, I think, for Silent Hill. I do want to get maybe 3.5 hours of gameplay. Hopefully take us to at least 70% through the game. But yeah, we'll have to see. But yeah, thank you guys very, very much for tuning in. You can expect, I guess, the horror story video to be posted at the end of this month. Take care. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your evening. And I'll see you guys in our stream. Good night. Bye.